Hello and welcome to St. Lucy's Guide. On this episode, I am going to give an overview of the book, The Screwtape Letters. And you're welcome to join us on Sunday afternoons as we do a more in-depth review of this book by C.S. Lewis. The Screwtape Letters was written well before the Chronicles of Narnia, and Lewis wrote this book to examine the themes of good and evil and of God and Satan. Though he was not the first writer to get into this particular theme, we know that in the 1300s, Dante wrote his Divine Comedy, and he takes us through a journey through heaven and hell and purgatory. And one of the famous lines from the Divine Comedy is a sign that's written on the gates of hell: abandon all hope, all ye who enter here. Also, we know that other writers wrote along this theme as well. In 1667, we have the epic written by John Milton, and he tackles the subject of Satan as well in Paradise Lost. His Satan says it is better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven. These lengthy books certainly were not accessible to the modern reader or the average person. They are long. They have to be put things in particular historical context. The knowledge of the theology of the time that they were written is necessary to get a good grasp of what the writers were doing. Lewis, on the other hand, wanted to give something more of an entertainment that would be impactful on a spiritual level and that would be compact and an easy dialogue for the average reader to be able to take in. Lewis wanted to do this in a particular way. And one of the ways that he was able to accomplish that was to use an allegory as the basis for the book. And in particular, he wanted to be able to provide this in a satire type of theme to be able to do that. We know that satires can come in three different fashions, but the satire version that Lewis used was that one of the writer being able to provide us with information in this allegory where he is coming along in the journey with us, and it makes it more accessible. But what would have prompted Lewis to get into this type of a theme? We know that Lewis did serve in World War I, and the letters are written during World War II. And that would explain why we have a backdrop of war throughout the book. And the theme of how war can have an effect on the human soul is certainly understood then. The letters first appear in the Anglican newspaper, The Guardian, in 1942. And each week, a letter would appear within the newspaper. And then eventually, the letters are gathered up and put into book form. And it was a book ever since. There are 31 letters from a senior tempter, that is Screwtape, to his junior tempter, that is Wormwood. Screwtape encourages corruption of every aspect of a man's life. Now, this man is going to be referred to as the patient. throughout the book. They do not try and find the very one thing, single thing that will corrupt the individual. No, rather that what they do is they find small things. The safest road to hell is a gradual one. It is a slow process, and it doesn't require big, immense themes, according to Lewis. One theme in the book that are that they're simply small things like small slights to others can really have an effect on both the patient, the man they're trying to corrupt, as well as others. So there are not monumental things, just those small slights, those small thoughts about others attending uh, church with him that help him put him on that particular path and brings attention uh, uh, to them. One thing that we recognize within the book is that what is hell? And in Lewis's mind, hell is a well-organized hierarchy that is the lowest members are at the top, and the hierarchy and those supervisors or those truly in power are going down, and we have an upside down triangle. These are clean carpeted offices with well-groomed men, um, and that they would not look scary or horrifying or things like along those lines. We do find that, however, in certainly old versions of Satan, who was considered a horned creature. First, Satan was modeled after the Greek gods such as Pan. Later, later he was fashioned after the English god Horn, the hunter, again, horn types of thing. Demons are also depicted as looking like gargoyles on a cathedral, things that would inspire fear just by looking upon them. During the age of Renaissance, the paintings had Satan as a kind of a snake, and we find that in Michelangelo's paintings that we have a snake with a human head on it. But now Satan is going to be a handsome man with charm and be able to corrupt us that way. Lewis has Satan as the CEO of this large corporation. Remember that throughout Scripture, Satan means adversary or accuser. Lucifer, another name that is used for Satan, is the light bearer, and we find that in Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12. And we also find that in Revelations chapter 12, verses 9 and 10. Christopher Marlowe in Mr. Faust, you remember the book by Marlowe, Faust sells his soul to the devil to gain power and wealth. And that we find this notion of Satan as more of an accuser, a negotiator, not a horrifying type of creature. Another name for Satan is Beelzebub, the Canaanite god Baal. We find that in Matthew chapter 12, verse 24. Certainly that Satan is going to be equated with Baal. Satan is, again, an accuser, an adversary, and we find such a thing occurring in the Garden of Eden. If we could over here, one of the things that Lewis wanted to really emphasize within this book was that there is this actual battle that's going on, a battle of good and evil. But it's hard to recognize that that is in fact occurring when you're simply listening to one side. Lewis's thought was, what if we could overhear the enemy and what they were saying and what they had in mind? Perhaps it would then enter the imagination of the average reader of his letters that recognize that this was a true battle going on. So we have these letters as a way that we could know that this battle is in fact going on. One of the things that we have within this battle is a recognition that God and the heavenly host are battling Satan. But over and over again throughout his books, Lewis liked to emphasize the fact that Satan is not equal to God, that Satan was a creature of God who was then corrupted and turned to evil. That if we took away everything that God is, there would be nothing left. It isn't the philosophies of dualism and others that have good and evil being equals, but rather that Satan is lesser than God and as a creature of God. But there is certainly this battle going on, whether with the recognition and remembering that Satan is simply a corrupt angel, this creature of God. And we can recognize that in Revelations chapter 12, verse 7. The war is ongoing, and it certainly happens on a daily basis. And we recognize that the hosts of heaven are vigilant, but we also have to recognize that those of Satan and the demons are equally vigilant with that. During the 3rd century, the Manichaeans certainly had a belief that God and Satan were equal, and that each person had within them good and evil within them, and that good and evil are in every particular person, and that there was an ongoing battle between good and evil. And then when we did do bad things, according to their theory, it was that one side was winning. St. Augustine certainly was part of this until he did convert to Christianity. Lewis often cites Augustine within his writings, and we realize that Augustine, once he did convert and give up that train of thought, was able to provide the church with a lot of our foundational understandings of our theology, and felt that finally that Satan was not the direct opposite of God, but of something less than that. Certainly, the church in 1215 declared this very particular, that Satan was not equal to God, but that was something lesser than him. The book also is meant to be, again, an allegory, so that meant to be an allegory for that, and that the an allegory for this, and it was an easy way for people to be able to understand it. We want something that people could understand, and that it could get past their tendencies to be defensive about what they were reading. And by allowing this type of a satire to exist, it could appeal to their emotional side, getting past their rational thoughts as to this whole idea of a war going on behind or unseen by human eyes, that we could better understand it. That we have this an understanding of the sinful nature of men. Um, did God give us free will is another big thing within this book. Do we have free will? And certainly we find that very true within uh, uh, Lewis's thoughts on theology. And one of the places that we can find validation within that is when we turn to the Garden of Eden and we have two people who had everything that they needed. Um, there was simply just one condition. They could not eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Humans needed to uh, uh, pick between uh, than God and themselves. And the fall comes when they do, in fact, choose themselves over God. We can pick to be good, and certainly in Genesis, we find that. Certainly in chapter 3, verse 4 and 5, we find that God created man to be immortal, um, and and that they did have free will, but that they chose to indulge themselves within that. We also find similar types of things in the book of Wisdom of Solomon, uh, chapter 2, verse 24, that people, in fact, do have free will. They're free to choose whether they want to embrace good and God's love or separate themselves and embrace the evil and the material world for themselves. Again, we have this patient in the book who is going to be tempted again by these two demons, these two tempters. And throughout the letters, we find that at each stage of the patient's life, they have this, he has the ability to choose good or evil. And that Wormwood, throughout his temptations, has that uh, job of tempting our patient to go towards evil. Um, and to do that, Wormwood will create frustrations and the most mundane things. The simple temptations are always going to be small things, nothing huge. Uh, Even as St. Paul was tempted, uh, and his with his thorn in his side, and never and it is never taken away. So our patient is going to have these frustrations and temptations in his life. Uh, Little sins again will be uh, will lead to bigger sins. We're not going to attempt him with large sins. For example, one of the statements within the letters says, well, why use adultery when golf will do? Another expression within the letters is why use murder when cards will do. Again, we want this light, easy path on the road to hell. It's going to be the small things that eventually add up that will lead us astray. And we know that certainly uh, that all are going to have that ability to do that, and we certainly find that within the Passion of Christ at Matthew chapter 26, verse 39. Um, we find that Christ had the ability to embrace his own free will and to follow that of God. The book also is about a man willing to embrace God's will versus his own will and his own passions and following uh, God's will. In the letters, we we find that being Christian can be turned to false beliefs as we go to our daily church, our local church, and makes someone can make someone self-righteous, which is a form of pride and turning them. The local church can be a great place to find others and follow our faith, but it can also lead to individualism, where the people in the pew think that they're doing just fine. And that wormwood is certainly told to corrupt uh, every pleasure that the man has, including attending church, and trying to find that individualism and encouraging that. And remember that everything that is good, it does come from God, but it can be corrupted and lead to bad things. And certainly, this is one of the themes that are going on between Screwtape as he writes to Wormwood, reiterating that notion that everything is going to starts out good, but it can be corrupted. And that's the best way to bring the person, our patient, along to a life of sin and bringing them to hell. Certainly, we can develop friendships with non-believers in one of the letters. And we know that that's one of the things that we have to be careful of who we hang out with and what we do and those choices. Certainly, we find that in First John chapter 2, verse 3, verse 15, that we have to be careful of who we associate with, that we are not drawn away from our belief as we associate with those people, that we are Christians, whether we're sitting in church or not. And love is not understood by Screwtape or Wormwood for what it really is. We find that in First John chapter 4, 7, and 8, that we know with love we learn to depend on God. Screwtape really does not understand that in that idea of dependency. We do have that theme again going on in Mere Christianity. To love God means that we have this dependence. Whereas Screwtape really doesn't understand that, neither does Wormwood. And what their understanding of the way to corrupt and deal with love is to create this individualism and self-reliance, and separating ourselves from our dependence on God. And certainly, we don't want any kind of dependence from other people. Lewis says that God is love, is unchanging. If we lose love, we really become doomed because of that. We become desperate things, and he reiterates that several times throughout the letters. To keep the man, one of the other things that is overemphasized is that we need to keep the man alive as long as possible, because as our patient is really becoming Christian and is settled into his faith, that we know that that can be changed later in life. The future always holds that opportunity to allow for the tempters to corrupt him and his way of thinking. So we want to keep him alive as long as possible so that we have this chance to corrupt him. And certainly one of the themes Lewis wrote about was that during our middle age, we can be corrupted because the luster of new things has passed away. Novelty has given way to the mundane. We have to work through our life, and we're trying to settle in, and we get so bogged down in the everyday world that we are no longer passionate about our faith. And those are the years that it's possible that we lose our faith and lose our way. So we have to be careful during our middle age. And again, that theme about let's keep the person alive as long as possible so that we have this opportunity to uh, to corrupt the person and to uh, have that separation between God and ourselves. We certainly find that at times when we are depressed or sad, which happens to all individuals, there too is a time that we can lose our way and be corrupted. If we uh, fail to meet our goals, we certainly might be depressed about that in our middle age and give up on our faith. On the other hand, what happens during our middle age when we do make our goals? We do become rich. We do receive the accolades that we're looking for, the wealth that we want. That certainly can be corrupting too, because then we're now more interested in the material world than the spiritual. We're more interested in earth than in heaven. So even reaching our goals doesn't necessarily mean that we are out of danger from being corrupted. Then we certainly will embrace the modern world, and we find that in Scripture warning us of that at Matthew 6, verses 19 through 21, about valuing the treasures of earth versus heaven. But once we see God, we will understand what all of this is about. One of the books that Lewis wrote was Once We Have Faces, and we understand uh, that there will come a time when we do reach heaven and we fully understand our theology and our faith and what it means to be Christians, will allow us to do that. And that particular book gave us that understanding that we are existing in this world and we don't always have our, our belief system in check, and that we simply have to wait, as difficult as that is. All right. The again, I don't want to give out the entire ending of the book. Just realize that we will be examining these particular themes throughout the next few weeks. And I hope that you will join us on Sunday afternoons at 4 p.m. Eastern Time as we discuss this book. And if you would like to join us, please contact us at StLucySguide@gmail.com for the link. Leave a comment below the video and find us on Facebook. And I hope that you will return and watch us in future episodes.